Hi guys, I had a request today from someone to go over just quickly how to fix some skin on the newborns with the red blotches and a more even skin tone. And I'm actually in the middle of editing for our client right now, so I figured I would just go ahead and record one of my images. To show a quick example of what I'm doing, this is right here an image that I just edited. This is my out of camera and this is my final edit, and so I'm going to show you how I went from this to this on another image. So this is the image I'm going to start with, and I am also recording this with the screen recording, so I'm going to be putting a clearer copy of this up on YouTube when we're done, because I know it is pretty difficult to see what's happening on the Facebook Live. So you can see it now, and I'm going to put a copy up on YouTube also. So again, we're going from this image to this image with this edit. So out of camera, final edit, but I'm doing it on a new image. So this is the one we're working on. Okay, so the first thing I do with all my images is I come here to the spot healing tool, and if you right click this you'll see the patch tool down here. I use that a lot also, but the first thing I do is with the spot healing tool, and I come in and zoom in up on my guy here, and I always make sure I've got a soft brush for this. I don't want my brush to be too hard. And with a small brush I'm just going to lightly go over any kind of little red blotches, and that should clean most of those up. This here. And if there's any little white bits or skin flakes, go ahead and hit those too. I have seen some comments about people talking about the little white bumps on baby's nose and on their face. That's actually completely normal, and that should be in your image. You don't want to try to edit those out. You just want to take out like these little white flakes and things here. But those little white bumps, I forget exactly what they're called, around the nose, those are totally normal, so don't edit those out. Okay, so I cleaned up really the major blotchy issues. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I have come to love the Greater Than Gatsby Newborn 2 collection, and I have been using that for nearly every image that I'm editing, my newborn images. And the very first thing I do is come down to the skin tone correctors, and I click that and run this one. And there's two things that I absolutely love in this this correctors panel here. I'll show you. When you run this, it runs the action with all of your different colors right here. So if you need to fix some reds or some orange or purple or gray, it all runs in one action. I know I saw some people were confused on that. They said they would run it and nothing would happen. It runs and it gives you all of your color options here, and you have to actually click the black mask, and then you take your white brush, which is what I have here. I'm going to make it a softer brush, and this is for my reduce the reds. Now that white brush I'm going to brush on, and it's going to take care of those reds for me where I need it. So when you initially run the action, nothing happens. You have to actually paint on which color you want to correct or fix in your image. Now I'm using a Wacom tablet, so that's why I don't ever come up here and change the opacity when I'm editing, because I have it on a pressure sensitivity. If I paint on lightly, it just goes on with a lower opacity, and if I paint on harder, it goes on with like 100% opacity. So you can kind of see down here in my mask, because I'm painting on lighter, it's going on a lighter gray color. That's because I'm probably painting on closer to like a 40 or 50% opacity right now. And I just use this to get rid of the red tones in his skin. I'm going to go and get this off of his fingers too a little bit. And then after I do anything, I turn it on and off to see exactly what I just did. It looks pretty good. The other one I use a lot here is warm the skin. So I'm going to click that mask down here. I'm going to make my brush a bit larger for this, and I lightly just go across all of baby's skin with this one. It doesn't make a huge difference right off the bat, but if you turn it on and off, you'll see it just brightens the skin up a bit. And I actually want to put a little bit more on his chin down here. There we go. Alright, I'm actually going to lower the opacity on that just a little bit because I don't want them to begin to look orange. I just want them to look warm. So now I'm done with that, so I'm going to right click and flatten my color correctors here, and I actually do this in a couple of phases. So that's my initial color corrector as far as the red blotches and things like that. Now there's a frequency separation down here, and this is done a little bit differently. I've seen a couple of different ways people do frequency separation, but the greater than Gatsby ones are very simple. I'm going to go ahead and run that, and I'll show you how this works. And I don't take nearly as much time doing this as some people do also. I'll show you. Right here, you'll see a copy of your original image, and then here is a paint on this layer only box, and then there's the texture box. So I'm clicked on the paint on this layer only, and I try to do this in really only 3 colors. I get a larger soft brush, and the way I shoot my images, I always have my light coming from one side, so I have a shadowy side, and then there's kind of a mid between your shadow and your light side, and then there's my light side where my light is hitting. So right or wrong, I'm not quite sure. This is how I do my frequency separation, and I really like the outcome. You're going to use your dropper tool and click the color that is best matched to the section of skin that you're using. So right now I'm doing my shadowy side, so I'm going to drop a piece of the shadow here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and really lightly I'm just going to shadow this over this side. I'm doing this very, very, very lightly. I'm going to pick a color in the middle and do my center color, and I might need to make my brush a little bit smaller, maybe pick another color down here to do around the lips because it is a little bit different. Painting this on really lightly. Make my brush a bit bigger. I'm going to pick a lighter color up here, and I'll paint that on. A little bit smaller, and paint down here. Okay, so if you see right now, I'm going to turn this on and off. This before and after. It just really smooths them out a little bit, and just to make it so it's not as intense, I do turn the opacity down just a little bit. Not a whole lot, maybe about 80% or so. It's different for every image. Now I do turn it on and off a little bit to make sure I didn't go over too noticeably on my blanket or around the outside. On the light side, I'll notice sometimes I'll go over the face and I'll have to go back in with a mask and take that off, and all I do to do that is I'll close my frequency separation box here and I'll click the mask button, so that turns a mask on. The mask is white, which means it's revealed, so right now that action is showing on the image. So I would take a black brush and make it a somewhat harder brush here, and I would just paint that on the outside right here just to make sure none of my frequency separation color went anywhere it wasn't supposed to. It didn't on this image, I was just showing an example. Let me actually get rid of that because I want to paint that back off because I actually forgot to do his hand, so I'm going to come back in here and fix that. Pick a color on his hand. I'll color that on really quick. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and flatten that, and then I come over to my facial feature enhancers. I'm going to run that one. He has closed eyes, obviously, but I still use the lash enhancer. I'm going to do a very small, soft brush, and I run this all along the lash line. And he's got really, really teeny tiny lashes, so I'm going to kind of darken those up a little bit if I can. And then I'm going to come do this side. Zoom back out, turn it on and off. That looks good. Sometimes I'll lower the opacity on that if it got really intense, but that actually looks pretty good. His eyes are closed, so no catch lice, nothing. His mouth is closed, no teeth. Rosy cheeks and lips. The lips, I'm going to go ahead and do that first. And I like the color that they use on the lips already. In this group, I just paint that on lightly. Oops, I went over a little bit. And let's turn that on and off. I probably lower the opacity on that down about 20%. That's good. 25%. And then the cheeks, I don't like how pink these are, so if you double click the color when you open that action up, you can change the colors. I like a more wine red color. And then I'm going to go back onto that mask, open up a softer brush. And for babies, I like to do like the whole cheek area. I don't try to stay just on the apples of the cheeks like you would as an adult. And then lower that opacity way down. I just want it to be barely visible on there. And I actually think his right side looks good, his left side looks a little bit dark. So I'm going to turn on my black brush and really lightly, I'm just going to go over that other side just to kind of take a little bit of that back off, like that. I'm going to go ahead and flatten that. Now, my images always run on 16-bit. I'm not sure if that's normal or not, but if you run on 8-bit, a lot of these actions work faster. A lot of them that have like skin smoothing and softening and stuff like that. So I leave my images on 16-bit while I'm working with color, with color correction, skin tones, things like that. And then at this point, I would go in and change it to 8-bit so the rest of my actions run a lot quicker. And so now I'm going to go ahead and do my, actually before I do this, I'm going to finish filling in my blanket here. And this is how I do that. I take my lasso tool and I just draw around the section that's not filled. You right click and click fill. Make sure it's on content aware and click OK. And you might need to do it a couple times just to make sure it fills all the way. There we go. I'm going to get rid of this dark spot in here too. There we go. And down here. I'll get rid of this one too. Just anything you think looks a little bit funny. Whoop. Don't like that. You can do it as many times as you need to just to play around with it. Okay, so now my blanket is filled all the way through. So then at this point, I go up to my simple and subtle foundations. I'm going to play that. This just goes over the overall image, gives it a nice once over, sharpens and smoothens, sharpens and smooths where it's supposed to. And I don't know why it doesn't, I can't see a huge difference, but for some reason every time I run this, I automatically turn the opacity down just a little bit. I'm not sure why I do that, but okay, so I'll flatten that. Now, before I do anything else, on this image, I didn't like that my blanket is cream. I knew in my mind when I shot this I wanted the blanket to be more of a gray or a blue, and I just don't have a gray or a blue flocati or blanket right now. So I knew I was going to have to do some fancy editing with that, and this is what I ended up doing. I had to write down what adjustments I made on my other image to do this. So the first thing I did, I went, let's see, I went to my hue and saturation layer and I click colorize, and you'll see that turns the whole thing into a solid color. And I want that because I'm going to be changing the color of the blanket, and this is the color that I changed it to. I changed my hue to 212. I guess I could write it in, but I'm not. I'm sliding it. I try to make my life harder. Saturation is 16 and my lightness is 9. Okay, now what I do with that is I have a mask on here, so I'm going to get my black brush and I go in at this point and I brush it off with a not so soft brush. I do a rough brush off of baby, and I actually go a little bit over to where the blanket is, and I'll show you why. I think it's easier to go back in and fix it because the blanket is such a, I'm matching it to such a similar color to his wrap. I want to see the yellow in the blanket so I can make sure I'm brushing it off and painting it on where I'm supposed to be, and I'm not accidentally adding it onto the wrap. Okay, so I did a rough color right here. Now I'm going to go in and zoom in with a much softer and smaller brush, and now I'm painting the white back on, so I want my white layer on. And I'm just going to paint this all the way around. I do want a soft brush for this. See, I got it on his face right there. This is a little bit of back and forth. And this does take a minute, but that's expected. I don't do this with a whole lot of images. I would only do it with a select few, and I only actually kept, oops, I only kept 3 images with baby on this blanket, so I figured that's not a terrible amount to do this with. Now there is some color casting on him here, so really lightly I am just going to brush this on here because there was some of that yellow tone coming through from the other blanket, so I am going to paint over that a little bit. Really lightly. Just like that. And you know what? I just realized this color I'm painting is actually not the color of the blanket. This is the color of an overall layer I did to my image. So what I'm going to do here is this. This is actually not the color the blanket's supposed to be, because I did this with 2 layers actually. So let me change this color because I did paint my blanket on here. Let me change this. I'll make this my blanket color. That was 249, 0, and -4. Okay, that's the color I had my blanket. Now the other one that I did, I'll go ahead and add that back on. I'm going to do another hue saturation layer. Now this one, let me put my adjustments back on, make it colorize. And this is the one that was 212, 16, and then 9. And what I did with this layer is I changed it from normal to multiply. There we go. And then I changed the opacity of that to 40%. Like that. That's how I got that look. So it took it from this big bright look like this, and I wanted it to be kind of that deeper, smokier look with the shadows. I love that. Okay, and then this one up here, the second layer, the one that I painted on, I changed those adjustments. That's the color of my blanket. So that's how I took the overall look of the image from the cream to the blue. Okay, now at this point I'm going to go ahead and flatten this, and then I'm going to come back to my overall adjustments. And let's see, the next one that I did when I come back over here, I did a couple of things. Down here I did a paint on light brush. Make this a big soft brush again. I'm going to paint some light back onto him on this side only, just where the light's hitting him, because like I said, I really like that shadowy look. I do have a final skin glow brush. I feel like I did paint that on really lightly as well, just to give a little bit of warmth back to it. Yep, just like that. And then for the artistic-y edit parts, this is what I did. Let me go ahead and flatten that. On this one I did Tummy Time, which is like a white matte. Just like that. And then I came down and I did a matte the edges. I love the matte the edges look. Just like this. And instead of turning that down, I actually think I like it like that. I'm going to brush it off a little bit with my black brush, just really lightly. I'm not going to brush it all off, but I'm going to brush it off a little bit on this side over here where his blanket is. Maybe even a little bit up here where his head is. Here we go. Let me check with my other one and see how similar. Yep. If ever I'm editing in a batch, not batch, but I'm editing images that are the similar situation, they're all same pose, same props, all of that. I always like to keep my edits open so I can go from image to image and make sure that they look consistent, that I didn't over edit one and they don't look similar. Okay, so my artistic edits are consistent, so I'm going to go ahead and flatten that. Now this is how I finalize my image when I'm finished. The last things I do, I come down here. This is all still the Greater Than Gatsby Newborn 2 collection, by the way. I didn't do anything outside of that collection. I come down here to the, where is it? Sharpen Details brush. There we go. I'm going to zoom in with my brush and I sharpen the lashes. I sharpen the nose, the nostrils, and I sharpen the lips. If they have a lot of hair and it's in focus, I like to sharpen it too. His hair isn't really focused. I had this really focused in on his lips and his face, so he was a little bit out of my focal range up there, but that's okay. Okay, so I flatten that, and then the last thing I do is I make a copy of my layer. I come up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and then I go to Sharpening, and I turn the sharpening up almost all the way. And then image to image, this might be a little bit different. I zoom in on the face just to see the before and the after. You'll see quite a bit of sharpening there, especially for print. I think this makes a big difference. And then maybe I'll take it down to 70% or so. Just like that. Flatten my image. Do my save. Save this to my desktop. And then I always come in after I'd save my initial one, I make a layer. And then with my brush, I come down to my logo. And make sure I have white. This is for my Facebook post or anywhere else I want to post this image. I come somewhere close to the face. I stamp it, and if I need to, I lower the opacity, but that actually looks pretty good right there. And then I flatten that one. I do another save as, and on this one, at the end of my name, I just put WM for watermark. And that's it. That's how I do my edits.